Hi everyone, this is Naren's Life with MS. I am Naren and it's Friday findings time, and I am so excited for this Friday findings, not only because I am very excited about one of the two articles that I am going to be sharing with you. I probably mentioned it more than once. It's article number 2, but um, but both of these articles are actually very, very interesting because they talk about MS in slightly different ways, and both of them actually have uh, you know will definitely allow for a lot more research to happen, a lot more it is just opening doors to really understand uh, how MS, especially now in this day and age, in the 21st century, in 2026, how is it going to be different, right? How is it going to change? How is it going to um, actually impact us in ways, and what are the treatments of the future? So talking about this, so the first article actually covers some certain chemicals that certain biomarkers that are involved in our bodies that might actually lead to a slowing down of the MS progression if they are treated properly through the proper medications or the proper treatments. The second article actually covers a certain chemical that has been termed the forever chemical, and there are three specific chemicals that already have a certain correlation, that the presence of these chemicals in the bloodstream can actually indicate or can actually showcase a certain correlation with uh, you know heightened risk and heightened risk for multiple sclerosis or the development of multiple sclerosis in patients. So yes, please do please do listen to both of these articles, and I do hope you have something to share as once you do listen to these articles. Starting off with our first article. Now this article is actually very interesting because it shows that we might have a lot of further research to do, and that there might be uh, a new reason to do research and find new treatments for MS patients, especially considering when we are trying to delay or slow down the disease progression, right? Rather than just limit the number of relapses that are happening. So, scientists actually found 6 different biomarkers that might actually be somewhat um, that can actually affect MS progression, especially during the late stage. And not only that, but targeting these 6 different biomarkers might actually um, allow for further improvement in ensuring that uh, MS treatments and MS therapies actually work on not only reducing the number of relapses but also slowing down the progression of the disease. Now, I have written down all of the names of the biomarkers, so just wait until I read them off. So the 6 biomarkers are RRM2B, CBR1, ETFA, DNM3, CAB39L, and NMRAL1. So with these 6 markers, researchers have found that they might actually be very important in terms of actually impacting to make sure that they delay MS progression. In fact, the first one that I did read out, which was, I think, what was it, RM2B, is actually one that is already being affected by a certain MS therapy, cladribine or Mavenclad, if we're using the actual name. Um, so Mavenclad already impacts RRM2B in such a way that it actually does help in slowing down MS progression. And so scientists have found the other five biomarkers that might actually, if they are, if there are drugs that are used to suppress these biomarkers, might actually help in slowing down progression of MS. Not only that, but a lot of different drugs that are available that can maybe suppress or actually affect these biomarkers in a positive light for the patient are currently not even being prescribed to MS patients. So that actually leaves open a whole new range of medication that might be available for MS patients. There might be new treatments that do become available for MS patients, especially considering that these six biomarkers might actually, impact certain different aspects of this disease. Not only that, but looking at everything that is going on and considering that this is just the initial studies that scientists have suggested or conducted, there is definitely a lot more research, a lot more thorough research that is required to ensure that there is more information, there is more findings found about these six biomarkers, how they might impact the progression of multiple sclerosis, and not only that, what are maybe the best treatment and therapies that are available to affect these biomarkers so that the progression of MS is actually slowed down in many patients. So do read the article that is linked in in the description section of this video. And so please, after that, do provide your thoughts, your comments, your insights, your own experiences, so that we can get a conversation started. And of course, probably one of the best things about this study is really showing how big or how much of MS is still left to find. And really, there should be a lot more research happening in this phase so that we can make sure that, in the future, we have much better care available for MS patients, right? And maybe throughout this, we can even get ever so close to finding that, elusive cure for this disease. So that was article number. The second article is an article that I am actually a little more interested in, and considering that I am, an environmental engineer, this definitely, is something that definitely excited me a lot more. So there are certain chemicals called forever chemicals called PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are substances which you can almost imagine are, very complex, um, very complex molecules that actually do exist pretty much in many things that we generally tend to consume, right? This comes as a byproduct of packaging, non-stick cookware. I mean, everything has some form uh, of PFAS available. Now, scientists have discovered that there are three specific PFAS that are actually that might actually have a very high correlation with developing MS in patients, especially women. Now, what are these? Now, with these the way that scientists actually discovered that uh, these chemicals might actually have a certain correlation to uh, patients, especially women developing MS, was that they found that there was a much higher chance of patients developing MS if they had concentrations of these three substances in their blood, or that you know uh, if they had it, and not only that, but how many patients that have MS actually had, you know, concentrations of these three different substances. So these three substances, and again, I had to write it down. Is the first one is PFHXS, which is perfluorohexane sulfonic acid, sulfonate acid. I think it's sulfonate. I think it's perfluorohexane sulfonate. Is the first one, and of course has the highest likelihood of being probably the biggest perpetrator in actually being something that is correlated to having developing MS, especially in women, considering that women showed a much higher concentration, especially MS patients. um, Female MS patients actually showed a much higher concentration of PFHXS in their blood, and not only that, but compared to healthy adults, they showed much higher concentrations, probably reflecting that there could be a much higher dosage of PFHS in patients that later on go on to develop multiple sclerosis. The second one that I do have is PFOA, which is perfluorooctanoic acid. This one had more of a middling sort of correlation that developed in between patients having concentrations of this substance in their blood, and uh, the ability to pretty much develop MS. PFOA, like I said, is between uh, PFHXS, and the third one that I will actually go over after this. But I think the biggest thing that we definitely have to consider over here is that, considering that PFAS as a whole, are some chemicals that are, that are actually showing that they have some pretty detrimental effects and impacts on the human body. It really goes on to show that, we definitely need to check what we are allowed to do with a lot of the consumer goods that we do buy, right? When we are talking about cookware, when we are talking about packaging, especially food packaging that have all of these forever chemicals involved, it definitely heightens the risk of developing diseases like MS, even if there is no direct causation that has currently been found. Definitely a correlation that is very high is, something to be worried about. And as an environmental engineer, and knowing that, you know that complex molecules like the PFAS that are, available everywhere in, our world, it is important that, we take much greater care, and we definitely need to conduct many more studies to find out what are really the actual impacts of all of these forever chemicals. The third forever chemical, which is called PFOS, which I think is perfluoro uh, octane sulfonate. I think that's the last one, um, or octyl sulfonate. Either way, that PFOS is found as the third molecule, which actually had probably a much lower, um, correlation with um, women, with patients having a high concentration of this and also having developed MS. But this also shows up in much higher concentrations in MS patients versus in healthy individuals. So definitely it is something that is somewhat worrying to actually know that these chemicals, which are not only uh, going to be present forever, as it says, right? PFAS are considered forever chemicals. They will not have the ability to disintegrate just because they are so well, pretty much designed, so well, you know so the bonds within all of these chemicals are just so tight that it is going to be very difficult to break any of them. It actually scares me to know that considering it's just three, we don't even know how many more such chemicals can actually be present in the out there that might also have a certain amount of impact or a certain effect on developing MS, or even you know considering something similar to these three chemicals, where presence of these chemicals can actually indicate a higher likelihood of MS being in that patient. So this is the second story. Of course, you can read this article as well through the link in the description section of this video. As I said, this article was definitely a lot more interesting for me, just because I am an environmental engineer, and it actually surprises me that we are still finding such things that do not only impact the environment, considering all of these are forever chemicals and will be there long after us as a species are probably not on earth anymore, but that they are going to be present for a very, very long time. So that covers article number 2. So please do share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences, so that we can get the conversation started. And with that said, thank you so much for listening to me. I know the articles today were pretty scientific, and I know I definitely did not do justice in describing either article, in describing anything that these articles were talking about, and which is why the articles are available in the description section of this video. But the big thing that I did want to take out of today's video is the fact that there is still so much more discoveries coming out of MS research, right? When I remember, I think this was when I had started Copaxon around 2011, 2012, and I would actually see some of the diagrams, some of the different some of the diagrams, some of the information that was available regarding all of the different therapies, all of the different treatments that were available for MS. And back then I think there were maybe somewhere in between, I think around 6 or 7, and now there are so many more, that really, I mean, the research on MS has nowhere near I think it hasn't even reached the crest of all the research that needs to happen for multiple sclerosis, because even to this day we are finding new ways of what are possible ways that we can maybe find MS in people, or what are some chemicals that are present in people's bloodstreams that can have a higher risk of developing MS, or even biomarkers that are within our bodies that if treated in a different way might actually change the way MS is impacting our lives. So there are so many things that are still left to be seen, and it really excites me when I have such scientific articles to share, that there is still so much that we have to explore in this world. And I definitely do want to salute um, to the researchers that have found these things, and that have made a call for more research to happen, more intensive research to happen in these fields, so that we can find even better treatments, even better therapies for multiple sclerosis, um, not only for today but for the future, considering that according to one article, that might there might be many more people that will develop MS in the future. But with all of that said, this is Nareen's Eye with MS. I am Nareen. I do hope that you are all ready for the weekend. I know it is Friday night, so I'm very excited to say that um, I hope that you have a lot of things planned for this weekend. And with all of that said, this is me wishing you a good night, sweet dreams, happy weekend, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye.